Live from Elderly Instruments. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thanks, Recording King, for letting Jim come pay us a visit. And yeah, this will be fun. Something to keep in mind, I do have this audience microphone set up, and I am planning on having a segment be for if any of you have questions, we'll do like the Jerry Springer thing where you make a line and you, hopefully that's where the comparison will end, but you never know, I guess.
You never know. This banjo world.
So if you think of questions, please, hold them and be ready with them for when that time comes. So Jim, it's great to finally meet you.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Get everyone started. Let's learn about you. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you became a banjo player.
That's a good question. I'm Jim Pankey. Some of you may know me from my YouTube channel. If you went to YouTube and looked for banjo lessons, you found me.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's just how it is. I'm from North Georgia. I live in Chatsworth, Georgia. I've been in that area for just about ever. My dad's family is from the next county over, and it's just kind of where we landed. Mm-hmm. Started playing banjo 1977. Something like that. It was the summer after my 8th grade year of school, and had opportunity. Mom and Dad both worked, which gave me I'm the only child. I had plenty of time to snoop around the house, see what was in the house. And my dad had a mandolin hiding in the closet that.
The dirty, dark secrets.
It has a mandolin. Oh, wow. And it's like, so, all right, let's see if I can figure this out. And I found this Mel Bay Fun with a Mandolin book, and I started poking around on that. And there was a guitar, and same thing, had the Mel Bay book. And then in my mother's closet, there was a old banjo hanging in there.
Mom's always right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it was a banjo that had belonged to her mother. And there's actually old pictures of my mother. She'd have been maybe 3, and her brother, who's a little older, and with that banjo in those pictures.
Oh, no way.
So there's family provenance with that.
Yeah.
But it was hanging in the closet in somewhat unplayable condition. It had strings and old friction pegs, but it would tune up. And I found, a pitch pipe. That's what we had to tune with. So we had pitch pipes for the mandolin, the guitar, and the old banjo, and figured out how to get it tuned up. I really didn't know anything, what to do with it. Didn't have, but did find the old red Pete Seeger book, and and it had some Clawhammer and some 2-finger and his Seeger style.
Yeah, the
stuff.
Seeger thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had all of that, but it didn't focus on any one thing. It was just a real broad overview. But I started noodling with it and kind of messing around with it. And Dad brought home the album that went with the Earl Scruggs book. I didn't have the book, but there was a record that went along with that book that demonstrated the exercises and stuff. So Dad brought that album home, and from that point on, the mandolin got set down, the guitar got set down, and I just really started to focus on the banjo. I just was like, wow, this is fun. And
so the way you set it up was kind of that you were snooping. So was this something that you were not supposed to find, or it sounds like they were pretty supportive once they realized that you had discovered this stuff?
It just wasn't really. Where we lived was small, and things just got tucked away. It wasn't like anything was, truly hidden. And it's not like, they were trying to keep it from me. Dad did play guitar, and, I was around it. His sisters sang, but...
Had you already been drawn to that type of music? Was this something that you, when you saw a banjo, did you actually have like a reference point for what it could do?
Oh, for real. Yeah. Okay. Even as a little bitty kid, and there's old 8mm movie of me trying to imitate Grandpa Jones. I'd have been 2 years old.
Well, like doing the spinning thing?
Well, with the hat and he'd wear his boots and he'd do that, he'd kick his foot way high up in the air and all of that. And of course I didn't, I was 2. I didn't have a banjo. I had a skillet. So my first banjo was a skillet. Technically.
We complain about banjos being heavy.
Yeah. so I had a skillet. Well, we were built different back then. But I just was always drawn to the banjo. If there was a banjo on a television commercial or whatever, I would come running to the TV as a little kid. Mom talks about me running to the TV in my walker. I just go wheeling in to where the music was coming from. And I always liked banjo. Loved Grandpa Jones, and it was just, I was just enamored with the instrument. Even, before I even started playing it, I would hear things on TV that had banjo in it. And I just loved it.
So it always caught your ear, yeah.
Yeah. And, Dad always listened to country music and old stuff. And then, we had some bluegrass albums. He had some Flat and Scruggs stuff and some compilation albums that had Stanley Brothers and stuff like that on it. And so that was the music that we had at home. If there was music on television, it was country music. I remember when Hee Haw first came on, it was in 1969. I'd just been a little kid, but I remember it. And I remember Dad he had just bought a cassette recorder. That was new. And he had bought a cassette recorder and Hee Haw would come on. He'd record it, like the songs and stuff on the cassette recorder.
Just like off the speaker of the
off
TV?
The speaker
That's
of
what
the
I
TV.
used to do, yeah.
And that way he could learn to sing them,
Oh, cool.
And then, but later, several years later, that's when I started playing banjo. And so Hee Haw was definitely part of that. And so, long story longer, one of the first benchmarks my dad ever gave me, it's like, because I was already playing, this is 1977, I'm playing. Well, on Hee Haw at that time, there was a kid, Jimmy Henley. And banjo players probably know who Jimmy is, passed away now. But, Jimmy, and Dad was like, if you ever get as good as him, I'll buy you a master tone. And it's like, well, it seems like a pretty fair deal.
Challenge accepted.
Maybe I should practice more. But I also remember telling my dad, we had that old banjo of Mom's, but Dad, for that Christmas, he found me a cheaper banjo. It was just a cheap K imported Japanese fly swatter, what we call them, banjo. Right. It's like, it was worse than any $200 banjo that you can get off of Amazon. I mean, it was playable, but it was a struggle. But
was it still a step up from?
But it was
Mom's?
definitely a step up from that. The one Mom had, the action was probably half an inch at the 12th fret. It was miserable. And so this one was playable, and I did learn to play a little better. And maybe 8-10 months later, I wound up with yet a better instrument. But that was serious motivation. It's like, if I ever get as good as Jimmy, we can get this better banjo. I never did get that good, but
okay. I wasn't going to try to spoil it to fast forward and hear if he ever had to buy you one.
At some point, Dad did decide that I was, a competent banjo player, and he really, he was very proud of me and what I was doing. And I was playing with some groups, and was gigging, around. I was still I was probably freshman in college at that point. And he's like, so we had started visiting stores and looking at instruments, and we'd drive up to Nashville, and we check out Gruns and different places. And there were a couple of stores in Virginia. I don't even remember what they were, but we had looked up there and different places. And I had been going to fiddlers conventions, and I ran into a fella at one of the fiddlers contests, Clyde Blaylock. And Clyde was a banjo player, and he was playing a Stelling. And I found out that Clyde had a music store in Hickson, Tennessee. They ran out of his house. His whole house. You walk into his house, like living room, there's, instruments here. Dining room, there was instruments. I mean, literally, it's like the house is now a music store. And he was a Stelling dealer, and he had banjos. So went up and it was like, would you like to buy, he wasn't, I wanted to play some banjos, we're looking. And so he was, well, here's what I've got. So I played a couple of things, and it really didn't turn my crank. I was like, it's okay. I said, well, you got anything else? And he's like, well, I've got the one I've been playing. So he brings it out as this gold-plated Stelling gospel engraved fancy banjo. And I think, well, this is crazy. There's no way I can afford this at all.
Yeah.
But I sat down, I played it, like, holy cow, this is the banjo. This is the one. And so I asked Clyde, would you sell me this? And he's like, I really wasn't planning on selling that one. And I was like, well, okay. And then he finally, he's like, okay, I'll sell it. And he priced it to me. It was a lot of money. And so we left. We didn't buy it. And we got maybe 5 or 6 miles down the road. And Dad and I were talking. He's like, "Is that the banjo?" He said, "We've played a bunch of instruments. You've never said that's the one. Is it? Or are you just saying that, or is it really the one?" And I said, "That's the banjo." And so we stopped at the payphone. I called Clyde.
Coming back.
if I come back and I bring you, I said, "I've got $500 that I can give you now to hold it, and I'll bring you the rest soon and get it." And so carried, went back, gave him the $500, and his wife, Sue, she's making up a little index card, like for the layaway and all of that. And so we're done with all of that. And as we're going to leave, Sue comes out and hands me the banjo case with a banjo in it. And Clyde said, "Just take it on with you and pay on it when you can."
Oh,
it's
cool.
like, wow. He didn't know me from, he had no idea who I was. And so I paid $500 down on this banjo. Well, the banjo it belonged to Ralph Stanley. It's the one that's in the Masters of the Five-String book.
Oh, wow.
It's that banjo.
And how did you that wasn't even a selling point.
It wasn't the selling point. And, by the time, we had done all of the paperwork and stuff, I knew it at that point, but that wasn't why I bought it. It was like, that's a bonus.
Added bonus.
It's a bonus.
Cool.
And it's the one that's in the master's book, which is kind of cool.
That's got to feel kind of reassuring too, to know that your ear was tuned into that one, and it happened to be the same one that an actual
that somebody
legendary professional also chose. Like it's
he chose and recorded with, and it's just like, wow,
good to have that validation.
But even with that, and Clyde trusting me like he did, I got it home and immediately called Jeff Stelling to verify that it was what because it's like, wait, there's something engraved on the armrest, and it says it was Ralph Stanley and the Clinch Mountain Boys was engraved on the armrest, and it's like, so I called him up, and he's like, yeah, I built that for Ralph, and then when he started doing the Stanley tones, I asked for it back, and so then Clyde turned out that I bought it from was like his number one dealer in the U.S. So Clyde would from time to time get some pretty neat pieces like that.
Yeah, the cool stuff. Oh.
Yeah, so that's how I wound up with it. I still play it.
Do you have a way of explaining maybe what it was about the sound of that one that caught your ear?
It wasn't so much a sound as what it felt like when I played it. So it sounded great. And every one of them that I played that day sounded good. But when I played it, I could feel it in my chest. I could feel it through the resonator. Every note that I hit a note, and it would bump me in the chest, and it's like, oh, this is it's not only is it putting sound out the front, but I'm feeling it in the back of the resonator and how all of that felt. And I could feel the vibrations in the neck when I was playing, with my hand. And it's like, it was like that banjo was alive.
Exactly.
It was,
I was going to say the same thing.
It was alive. And it's like, and none of the others felt like that. It was just, they were good, but for whatever reason, for me, that banjo, when I played it, it was just like, it was different.
Yeah, because I
had played a bunch of stuff. Like when I went to Gruen, we played some really cool old pre-war stuff.
Yeah.
But none of it spoke to me that way. There was a RB7. It was an actual
some of the real deal stuff.
It was because this would have been in the late 70s, early 80s. It was a legit RB7, and hindsight, should have bought it. It
would have been a good investment.
It was a bargain. I remember the price on it in 1980 probably. It was $7,000
for the 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a perfect price.
That'd be nice.
I'll take 2 of them.
Exactly.
But
you need a backup for those.
Yeah, but it didn't speak to me the way that Stelling did, and but because it just was alive when I held it. It was responsive and everything. I hit a note and I could play it real quiet and then I could just lay into it hard, and it just took it. The harder I hit it, just the louder it got. It some banjos they'll flatten out, a certain spot. They don't, you hit them harder, they just kind of splatter instead of just going with it. And that banjo, you play as hard as you want, and it will do that. And so that was the one. And I played it for a long time. It was my primary instrument for over a decade.
Yeah, that's really cool. Going back to your own learning and your own progress as a player, you said that from the time you got that first real basic banjo to 4 or 5 years later, you were already playing in bands and stuff.
Yeah.
So you obviously had made quite a bit of progress in that time. What do you think the important, what did you do to learn? What were the important steps that you took? What helped you out in those years?
Being a stubborn child, as I was, I was one of those kids. You couldn't show me stuff. I had to figure it out. You could, because one, I didn't know if I could trust you. I didn't know if you knew what you were talking about. I barely know this instrument. How do I know that you're showing me what's right? And so for me, that drove me to looking at or listening to albums. I knew Earl Scruggs was good. Mm-hmm. I could listen to Earl play. I knew Earl was good. He was famous. He must know what he's talking about. Yeah. And so I took the Foggy Mountain Banjo album and, I listened to it over and over. All the Flat and Scruggs stuff that we had at home, I listened to all of that over and over. We had some Stanley Brothers stuff. And so I started trying to figure it out from the record. And fortunately, our old record player that we had at the time, it had a 16 speed, so I could put a 33 on there and slow it down to 16. It was almost half.
Yeah, basically an octave.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, and so it was half speed, but an octave lower, which was, for me at the time, extremely annoying. And so most of the time I was just trying to play along with them at full speed, which, one, you either pick it up quick or you don't. And if you can't figure out what they're doing, but you have to keep up, you have to figure out something that you can do to get through some part of a tune. So, if you can't do the lick like Earl, but you want to play along, you've got to do something. I remember like in Cripple Creek, Earl, he plays that C. For the life of me, as simple as that is, for the life of me, I remember not being able to figure out what the heck he's doing there. Yeah. So I would do something like, it's like, well, I know that's not, and I knew that's not what Earl was doing, but I knew I could do that, and I knew I could do that along with the recording and just play along.
Yeah, so still fits.
So a lot of what I was doing in the beginning was just playing along with albums and recordings and playing along with those older recordings like the Flat and Scruggs stuff, Stanley Brothers stuff, Bill Monroe stuff. Those are all recorded live. A lot of it was recorded, single ribbon mic, and everybody's playing, and you listen to the old Flat and Scruggs stuff, it's got that whole ebb and flow of tempo. It speeds up, it slows down. Vocal part comes, it slows down. Mm-hmm. Fiddle break, Paul Warren, Paul's going to speed up.
Yeah, it surges a bit.
And so I'm playing along with that. So by the time I did start playing with other people, like at one of the first places I ever played with strangers was at the Prater's Mill Fiddlers Convention in Whitfield County, Georgia. I'd never played with these folks, and the only person I had ever played with was Dad. He played rhythm guitar for me. Right. And so here I am at a festival, and there's these guys, and of course now I know who they are, but at the time I had no idea. And they've got a nice little jam going, some stuff, and playing some tunes. And I kind of know most of these because I've been playing with the Flat and Scruggs records. And so I'm standing off to the side playing, and pretty soon Jim, one of the guitar players, he calls me over and says, "Come over here and play." I don't know any of these things. He said, "You'll do fine." And so, because I'd spent all that time just working with the records and playing along with the recordings and just figuring out how to create a break on the fly, then I was able to, actually, that was my first jam session, and I got through it and I didn't die. and didn't embarrass myself. I mean, because and they're all ask me, well, where'd you learn to do this? And it's from just I play along with the records. I'm not playing with other people.
It's basically a real life record that you're trying to play along with.
Well, yeah, when you're, especially the early Flat and Scruggs stuff, I mean, that's basically just guys all playing together. And, and you figured it, and so much things I learned from that, and probably can't tell it from this banjo at the moment, but I learned to tune. And because those records weren't in tune with anything, they were just in tune with each other.
Yeah, and then especially once you get it at half speed, it's all bets are off.
Yeah, and so I learned to tune my instrument, and like even on the Flat and Scruggs, especially on the Foggy Mountain Banjo album, you get to ground speed. Well, that's a recording now I know from several years prior when Earl was still tuning a half step sharp. Mm-hmm. And so that one stands out. And it's like, well, dang, what do I do now? Do I put my capo on? Or no, I just have to retune. Yeah. And then there's some albums that I had. I literally had to retune my banjo for every track on those albums. And so you just learn to tune on the fly.
At some point, I made for myself a tuned Foggy Mountain Banjo album. I put them all through whatever my Audacity and pitch shifted them until they were exact. And now I have like the one that I can actually play along with.
Right.
And it sounds
you can pitch shift. You can speed shift them too.
Right. Yeah. Or that. Yeah. So you just gave me a lot to work with. I think the first thing that I am wondering is you said that oftentimes if you couldn't figure it out exactly, you made your own approximation of whatever worked.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that helped you develop your own way of playing in general, maybe something that you would even consider as like whatever the Jim Pankey style of playing is, maybe that helped you in that way.
It did. And I got permission to do my own thing from Raymond Fairchild. So we had an old guy in Dalton, Georgia. His name was Otis Head. Otis had a store, but he had music there from time to time. And there was another old guy in Dalton, Amos Bigham. And Amos and Otis knew Raymond, and they would have him come down from time to time and just do little concerts.
Yeah.
And so Raymond came down and had done this concert, and afterwards, we go up and do the whole shaking howdy, meet and greet and get an autograph and all of that. And Raymond lets me play he was playing RB1 at that point.
Okay.
And as I recall, it was just an RB1, still had the hoop. It was, but he hands it to me. Of course, I play banjo. I got to tell him,
Yeah.
And he said, well, here, you can play this one. So he hands it to me, and so I'm playing it. And then my dad and he are talking, and I don't want to wear out my welcome on the banjo, but as I'm playing, Raymond's listening to me, and I walk back and hand it to him, and he says to me, you play real good, boy, but don't copy nobody. And it's like, oh. Because at that point, I was digging into the Foggy Mountain Banjo album. I was listening to some Stanley Brothers stuff, and I was just trying to figure out what they were doing. And, and some of it I could do. And that few things back then that I could do, I was pretty proud of. And then Raymond's like, just, don't copy nobody.
That was actually a negative for him.
Yeah. It's like, okay, that makes sense. I can go, now it's okay if I want to play Cripple Creek. I can add that lick and not feel bad about it. That's my lick. Of course, licks are what they are, but it was a way I could do it. So I felt pretty good about that, and it gave me, it was almost a confidence boost. It was a compliment. You play real good, boy. And then it was a criticism. Don't copy nobody.
Right.
And it's like, wow, I got both from Raymond at the same time. I got a compliment and a criticism all at the same time. But it was so helpful. And then when I started listening to, other albums and other bands and other pickers, it was like I could find bits and pieces that I could do, but it was also encouraging that those things that I couldn't quite figure out, I could figure them out my own way, and it was okay because Raymond said so.
Right. Yeah, well, it means a lot more, especially coming from him who really practices what he preaches in that way, because he had his own wild style. So that being said, what do you think are some elements of your style, or what are? I guess I'll just ask it open-ended like that.
That's a good question. It's funny, if you were to ask Trevor Holder that, Trevor can imitate me.
Oh, that's funny.
He can play Jim Pankey style banjo. There's a kid in he lives Signal Mountain, Chattanooga area. And his name's Matthew Milligan, and he fantastic picker. And he's not been playing long, but we were at Spigma, and he came up to the room. We were just sitting around playing, and he was playing one of my banjos. I said, "You're playing my banjo. You got to play it like I would." And so he drops into this tune, and he's got some just little goofy little licks and stuff that I do. And it's like, oh, I hate you just. It's like,
he called your bluff.
He did, and he could do it. But there's things that I do, can I even do them on command? So I do these little backwards bends where other banjo players will often do. So I do these backwards bends. That's one thing. And I do them on the fourth. So it's all of these little bends and stuff where a lot of pickers will do a pull off or a hammer on. Stuff like that. And I'm sure there's other things. And as I play, I kind of stumble into them. And sometimes it'll surprise me, especially like when I start to build a video, it'll be like, oh, crap, that's a Jim Pankyism right there. What is that? Why do I do that? And how do I explain it? And so it might be. Let's see. That's that Tony Rice bend.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't know that at the time,
Yeah, it just sounded cool.
Yeah. So stuff like that, little backwards bends, other,
I mean, something that I heard in that, not only the backwards bends, but where those bends happen, it seems like you're maybe doing it like a 16th note earlier than you would be. So it kind of adds like a syncopation effect to it also.
There's that. And a lot of that came from me trying to just play along with, Earl or whoever I was listening to, try to keep up, It's like when you get the recording of somebody playing, and it's like, dang, that's like 170 beats a minute. How am I going to keep up? What do I do now? It's like, well, I guess I'm going to have to cheat. I can't do that. Single string lick. It's like, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do a pull off, or I'm going to do something there that's different. Whereas, and then. But that's just one thing. I mean, I'm sure there's others that probably, like I say, I don't know them until I start trying to break it down to figure out what it is that I'm doing, which. And then when I figured out any kind of melodic stuff, I would try to find places that would work. But not necessarily working out a melodic break, but like, how can I get from here to there in a tidy manner. And I think that was where a lot of the melodic stuff eventually first started. Probably that lick. So it was a way, so stuff like that. But I mean, that's not unique to me, but probably.
But it was something that you use a lot.
Yeah, something, you know, as I apply, I find other ways to apply it that maybe a lot of times it's just trying to find a way to play more of the melody.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider yourself a big, like Bill Emerson guy?
Not really. I mean, I've listened to a bunch of Bill, but as to sit down and try to copy what Bill did, not really. But I listened to it, and it all seems super familiar.
Okay.
You know, it's like, oh, I kind of get that. Yeah, I know what he's doing there. And it's like, do I do that? No, not really. But there's some neat stuff, you know?
Yeah. There's a certain, like, fluidity that I feel like I hear with how you do it. So there's just...
No, I mean...
Couldn't help but wonder. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the first players that, you know, that I started listening that kind of had that fluidity was Ben Eldridge.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You know, and I remember I bought that Live at the Cellar Door.
Sure.
And listening to all of that, I'm going, yeah, I know that. I know that lick. I play. I do that almost, you know, and I'm playing along with it, you know. It's just because, like, for me, I get a record. It wasn't just to listen to it. I had to play along. There was never the play it and listen to it first phase. It was put it on, get your banjo out, you know, and I'm playing along, and there's a lot of stuff when I'm playing along, listen to Ben, it's like, wait, we did the same lick there.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
It's like, I guess that lick just goes there.
Just have the same sensibilities. Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
So as I warned you, I was going to woefully neglect your clawhammer playing just because I'm biased. But you did mention that, you know, you're an excellent clawhammer player as well, and you mentioned that there are a lot of things or ways in which your clawhammer style informs your bluegrass style, and also vice versa. So how would you explain what you mean by that?
I think rhythmically, I know, like, one of the groups that I played with for a long time was just a 4-piece group, and with that group, you know, we had Roy Curry on guitar, and so if our guitar player is playing lead, then we've got to have something in the background that's not just a banjo going. I mean, you got to fill that hole, and so some of the rhythms that I'm thinking of clawhammer wise, and not just your basic bum ditty clawhammer rhythm, but there's stuff that I do in clawhammer that gave me just ways of filling big holes. Just this droning thing that I pull from. If I was going to sing a song and play clawhammer banjo, then that's what I'm doing. I'm just playing these low drones to fill that gap, and I can do that against pretty much any decent guitar break, and I'm not going to be stepping on them, you know. So there's a. So it's just filling space, and so I'm pulling those ideas from Clawhammer, and then the other things. I was trying to think of an instance that I actually do it, and I occasionally they come up, and Roy Curry is good to point them out to me because we do some duet stuff. But in Clawhammer, we will do this thing where we hit one string, and then we'll pull off on another string.
Yeah, that blows me away. Right.
So there's stuff, sometimes that happens. And so when I'm trying to break down a tune, I will discover I have used that technique.
On a bluegrass tune?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's like, wait, how do I explain? Do I want to try to explain that on a YouTube video? Probably not. You know? But it's... But
I'm actually surprised that technique hasn't really like made its way into more bluegrass playing, because the possibilities are pretty endless.
Yeah, Hartford does stuff that I really don't understand, but a lot of his later, faster stuff, he's using a lot of techniques like that, where he's pulling the hammer-ons, the pull-offs, and the different things to get to a tempo that he wasn't comfortable doing with his right hand. So it allows you to do things. Yeah,
it's another little cheat code thing.
Absolutely.
Well, let's move on to your teaching. As you kind of said, a lot of people who know you these days know you because you are, can we say you're the top banjo influencer out there? You're one of a small handful of top banjo influencers. We think so? We have at least one person. Judges say, yeah, it's confirmed.
As somebody that teaches primarily banjo online, yeah, I'm it. There's, Banjo Ben has more subscribers than me, but Banjo Ben also has mandolin, guitar.
Yeah.
You poke around my channel, you'll find a little bit of guitar, you'll find a little bit of mandolin. But how many videos do I have? 500? I don't know.
That's a good question. I was maybe going to.
Why would I know that?
Yeah. Well, maybe you won't know this either, but I'll ask it anyway. What do you think it is about your approach that has resulted in you being pretty darn successful at that? What resonates with people about the way you teach?
I think the thing that I do, that I set out to do, even from the very beginning of me teaching, before even YouTube, I was teaching private lessons and doing all of that. And one of the things that I tried to do with my students is give them the tiniest of bite-sized piece that they can work on right now and have somewhat instant success, a bite-sized piece. I want you to take your thumb. I want you to hit the third string. Listen to that. How's that feel? Do that over and over. Now let's add a pinch. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to go home now, and I want you to practice that, 30 minutes a day for the next week, and I'll show you something new next week. That's what I was doing with my beginner students. And, they're paying for a 30-minute lesson, and I'm done in 5. But this is something that you need to work on this week. And I want you to go get comfortable with that, because, I can sit here and show you more stuff, but you're not going to remember all of it, nor are you going to be able to practice it all this week, and you're going to come back and you're going to have that pinch pattern down. So go work on that. Next week, we'll add something to it. We'll learn a right hand pattern and a chord. Go home and practice that.
Yeah.
And so it's the bite-sized pieces, and that all came from my live in-person lessons. So when I sat down to do my online lessons, I tried to think about, I approached it like I was teaching somebody that's sitting right there in front of me. So if you watch my videos, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking in general. I am talking to you specifically. So I try to address you. I shot, and I still do, shoot everything with my cell phone. So I had an iPhone 5 for those first little lessons. I propped it up on a music stand in front of me. I didn't even have a tripod. I propped it up on a music stand, tilted it, and got the banjo in the video, which means my head was not in the video. But if I wanted to talk to you, and if I'm talking to you, I'm going to look at you when I talk to you. So I would lean over and talk, have my head in the picture. And so that became some sort of a
That's like your signature thing.
Yeah, it's a signature thing that was just born out of kind of necessity. I didn't want to be a talking hands video. There's enough of that online, and I want to look at you. I want to talk to you, and I want to encourage you. And so the bite-sized pieces, the accidental goofiness. It was so funny. I posted these videos, and it's just me trying to teach and trying to help folks learn and be encouraging, be real positive. Yeah, you can do this. If I can do it, you can do it. And then people are saying, we love your videos. You're so funny. And I'm going, I didn't even know I was funny. I wasn't shooting for funny. It just kind of happened.
Should I be insulted?
Right, exactly. It's like, I wasn't shooting for funny. I was just shooting for just, hey, it's I'm just me. And some things are amusing, and sometimes, evidently, I do say things that are funny, and
Well, I know firsthand how difficult it is to be speaking into a microphone or a phone, and that people are going to hear it, but in reality, present company excluded, there's not usually someone there
right.
that you're actually talking to. You're just in a room, and that's a difficult thing to like get your mind in the right mindset for.
So what I did is I took a sticky note, I drew a little face on it, and I put it on my phone right above the little camera thing.
All right.
And so I would talk to it.
I'm getting podcast tips here as we speak. This is great.
This is the person I'm talking to. So there's a face. And sometimes I would, I'd use the same sticky note from time to time. A lot of times I'd just make a new face. This is the guy I'm talking to today.
That's really funny.
But it was a way to remind me that I wasn't just talking to a camera. I wasn't just talking to the air. I wasn't just talking to the cats or to myself. I was talking to somebody, and somebody is on the other end of that video. And so trying to give bite-sized pieces that people could practice and learn, and do it in such a way that gave them confidence to know that they can take these little pieces and turn it into anything that they want. And, it's like everything. And the other part of why I feel like that I've done is successful is that everything, all of my videos, everything that's out there, at least from the instruction, if you start from my instruction videos, so from that date forward, everything is building on that. So if I decide that I want to teach, Blue Ridge Cabin Home or something, I start with my beginner lessons. How can I play Blue Ridge Cabin Home with the skills that I taught in those first 10 lessons? And then what can I do new? So in that, and so here you're going to learn, you're going to take stuff you already know, and then I'm going to show you a new lick. And then later on, we might do another song. We'll do Old Home Place. We're going to take stuff from the beginner set. We might use that new lick that I taught you in Blue Ridge Cabin Home, and then I'm going to show you something new in Old Home Place.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So I always try to start with what was in those first 10 lessons.
Okay.
And then from that point on, everything else, I try to add something new in each lesson.
But it's at least familiar territory to give them a little confidence to start with. Yeah. That's cool. What do you think have you changed your approach over the years, or what do you think you've learned about what it takes to make an effective video for like the YouTube format that, maybe wouldn't have occurred to you if you were just doing the in-person lessons?
One thing, the big thing I learned was when I first started doing YouTube, was like, as soon as YouTube was available, I started posting little performance videos. I post video from the band I was playing with, or I'd sit and play a Clawhammer tune or sing a tune or whatever. And I learned really quick, it didn't matter if it was me or whoever. I mean, I could go online back then and and look and find Tony Trishka playing, or Noam Pekelny, or somebody, playing and just absolutely killing it. And I'd look and they'd had like 300 views. Nobody goes to YouTube looking for that. And so I had a local guy, Keith, reached out to him. He's a banjo player and plays fairly decent, but he's still kind of intermediate. And he said, "Man, can you show me how you would play, what was it, Eastbound and Down?" I thought, "Well, yeah, come by the house, I'll show you what I do." And he said, "Nah, just make me a video and send it to me." Well, I made him a video, and he wanted to, I said, "Is this helpful?" And he said, "Yeah, this is great, exactly what I needed." I said, "Well, maybe I'll share that on YouTube." And it got fairly popular. So that was one of the first ones. But I've learned a lot of things. And most of the things I've learned on YouTube since that point was one, listen to the comments or read the comments, because they're going to tell you what they want, and not necessarily songs, but they're like, man, I really like that. I wish that you had played through it first before you went into the instruction.
Yeah.
I was like, well, duh. That's a great idea. Why didn't I do that? So now my lessons, I will just play the tune, at a medium tempo. Just that way, if they want to go back and play along, it's at a medium, it's not breakneck speed. It's just medium tempo where they can hear the notes. And I will do that. And then throughout the lesson, the other things that I will do in the lesson is, I'm careful as to what I think people already know. And then if there's anything really new and unique, then I will stop and we will break that down. And then I will play through that part of the song slowly with that new lick. And then I usually, people were saying, man, that's cool. I wish you had played through it a lot slower. So now I come back and play through it even slower toward the end. And then a lot of times at the end, I'll just burn it up, and it's like, this is what you can shoot for.
Yeah.
But I'm careful with that too, because I used to do that a little more, and I found that was intimidating folks. Yeah.
Even if it's at the end?
Even if it's at the end. Okay. They get to the end, they go, oh, man, I thought I was going to be able to do this, but now, no. And so I try not to do that. I try to make sure that everything that I put out there is very can-do, and I don't burden anybody down with music theory. I made a comment earlier today. It's amazing all of the stuff that I know about music theory that I willfully ignore. Because I don't feel like somebody learning to play this needs to know. Uh-huh. It's not that important. The importance is the sound. It's like one of the recent videos that I posted. I forget what it was, but it's like, we're going to put a little bend here. Well, why? It just sounds good. That's why. We're just going to do it because it's cool, and you can be the cool kid. But for me, it's like, yeah, we can explain that. We can talk about why we bent there, what we were shooting for, how that bend turns it, it drags us back into the Mixolydian mode that we're trying to shoot for here. But nobody you don't need to know that. I'm trying to learn Spanish. Can I conjugate verbs? No, but I know a bunch of them. And I kind of know when I'm supposed to use them.
Yeah, someone will probably know what you're trying to talk about.
And so that's the goal there.
I have plenty more to ask you. I hope we're still pretty good on time. Everyone good? Okay. But I kind of want to give folks an opportunity. Do any of you have questions that you'd like to ask Jim? And if so, walk on over to this microphone.
Yeah, you get to be
on
the mic.
And I guess the standard disclaimer will be, your voice might be on the actual podcast. If that's a problem for you, just say it and I'll know to edit it out. But that'll be kind of part of the deal.
Hiya, Jim. Is this live? Good. So I've heard you say a few times that you avoided tablature as long as you could until your 30s or something. Is there a reason that you avoided tablature and a reason that the people you teach should avoid tablature?
One, I avoided tab. Just how, like I already said, I was a stubborn kid. You couldn't show me anything. Uh-huh. I had to figure it out. And it looked like paint by number to me. And I remember as a young kid getting a paint by number set, and it's like, man, this is not like I'm really painting. I'm just coloring here by these numbers. And to me, I wanted to hear it, and I needed to hear it. And then the tab was kind of confusing to me. But I could figure it out. I felt like I could look at this on a piece of paper, and it wasn't like I didn't know how tab worked. I mean, I had general understanding of that, but to write a whole song out in tab and then try to play every note by that piece of paper seemed like just a disaster to me waiting to happen. I wanted just to be able to play. And so for my students, and if you've done my beginner lessons, there's no tabs for those.
Right.
And I state that clearly. There's no tabs. I mean, it's almost a language-based approach where if if you got a little kid and they're learning to talk, you don't teach them to read first. You teach them to talk first. Right. And then later we teach them, how old were you when you learned to read? 4 or 5 years old? Mm-hmm. How old were you when you learned to talk?
Yeah.
2 or 3 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're already talking, making sentences. You knew how words worked. You knew how to communicate. And so that's my goal with staying away from tab as much as possible. Yeah. Tab is a great tool. There's times where even I will I wonder how so-and-so played that. Mm-hmm. And, and I'll listen and try to figure it out. But if even then I can't figure it out, then I might go look for an actual transcription of that. But I'm not going to play the whole song. It might just be a lick. And even then, what I've found with myself, if I learn a lick from tab, I find that it's not, I'm locked into it. I don't have the flexibility with it that if I had learned it in such a way that I just did it my way, then I can twist it however I want it, and it's not exactly like that tab.
Yeah, it has a little better context to it. Yeah.
I remember learning, so once I did learn a little bit of tab, I remembered learning a piece. I don't remember what song it was at the time, but I learned it. And for a long time, that's the only way I could play it because that was the way it was on the paper, and so I was been in my 30s, and that's the way it was on the paper, and that's the way I learned it, and I was kind of stuck with it. And as adult learners especially, we feel like we're up against the clock. We feel like that we got to learn this the best, most efficient possible way. And tab seems like the answer, but if you memorize that tab, what have you actually done? You memorized the tab. Did you learn the music? Probably not. And so I discourage the tab use. If you go to buy one of my tabs, and I do sell them, most of them say, you really don't need this. You should probably just go back to the video. But they try, folks are buying them anyway, but yeah, I just feel like while it's a useful tool, and like I picked up a book at a little music store one time. It was by Lee Elliott, and he's a picker from, I don't know where Lee is now, but he was in Florida at the time. I think he's from Illinois or Indiana, Midwest, and good picker. And the book had just a little bit of tab in it. Mm-hmm. It showed how to do an alternating roll, showed a forward roll, showed how to do a pinch pattern. And then he had 2 little fill-in licks. He had that lick in it and had that lick. So I had those 2 licks. And then the rest of the book had no tab in it. It was just instruction. He'd say, do a forward roll, start on the 3rd string. All right, we start there. Now do it off the 2nd string. Now hold A minor chord and do it off the 3rd string. And he would walk, it would be this recipe for a song. Uh-huh. And so, he'd say, do lead in number 1, okay? Now do a 3 pinch. Now do 2 slides, Cripple Creek slides. Now hold all A minor chord, do a forward and reverse roll, and pick up your finger on the reverse. Now do a 4 pinch, 3 pinch. And next thing you know, you're playing Beverly Hillbillies. So there was no tabs. There were verbal tabs. They were written recipes, but it was cool to go and look at the next song. All right, we're going to do Old Home Place or Blue Ridge Cabin Home. So do lead in number 4. Then it'd be Cripple Creek rolls.
Yeah.
And so I was able to figure out that certain rolls, certain licks, I could apply everywhere.
Yeah. So I call it banjo Mad Libs.
Absolutely.
It's like these, I forget the word I'm thinking, these modular bits that you can.
Do you remember the banjo lick cards?
No, I never had them, but
Do you remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seemed like Elderly used to sell them back in the day.
I think you're right.
And,
yeah, same thing. For sure.
Yeah, you could, it's like, okay, where's my G? So here's my G's, here's my C's, here's my D. And it's like create a break. You know?
Yeah, you throw them all out on the floor, pick them up, and you just wrote a tune.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Any other questions from y'all? Yeah, step on up.
So you mentioned, you hear me? So you mentioned something earlier that actually caught me off guard, and it's been a while since I've listened to a couple of the podcast episodes, but I've never heard Raymond Fairchild's name brought up. So did he ever have any other influence on you besides telling you to pick your own style?
Yeah, I listened to a lot of Raymond Fairchild's banjo playing when I was learning to play. You know, we went and saw Raymond. You're going to buy a record, so I bought a couple records, and I would go home and listen and try to play along. Things I learned from Raymond is I absolutely stink at single string stuff. Learned that immediately. I learned how to survive with a forward roll, and how to twist a forward roll into a lot of different things. Another thing that Raymond does that I had learned from a lot of the Ralph Stanley stuff, Raymond will index lead. And so I do a lot of index lead that a lot of Scruggs players don't necessarily do, and that was picked up from Raymond and Ralph Stanley. So those types of things. The other thing when I was a lot younger that I picked up from Raymond was tempo and speed. So much of what he done was just blazing fast.
Yeah.
But as far as, musical, the way he approaches music, the way he approaches tunes, maybe not so much, but definitely like index lead, how to survive with a forward roll, how to figure out some of the things when trying to play along with Raymond. I figured out what I could throw away and keep up with the tempos.
Right.
It's like, what do I need? Can I do an alternating roll on this song? No, not a chance. Too fast. Got to throw that away. So what are we going to do now? How am I going to play Cripple Creek without an alternating roll? And so
you just learn how to be humble, I guess, is the main thing. That's funny. Yeah. Good question. I think you might be right. I don't know how many times he's been brought up.
Well,
not many.
It's ironic because throughout the week I was listening to Raymond Fairchild, and just to hear his name brought up just was like, whoa, that's like the first.
That's your sign.
Yeah. There you go.
It's your sign.
It is.
More Raymond.
Did we have another one?
I saw some.
Yeah.
I made this trip all the way up here to ask one question. I've been playing for 4 or 5 years, been through your 10 lessons, got into Cripple Creek, got into Banjo and Holler. Mm-hmm. I've come across a few songs, and one of them is Down the Road. Mm-hmm. I know the notes. I can't put that thing in rhythm. So, is there a secret to it?
Yeah, there is. So my first question to you is, can you sing Down the Road?
Can you sing it? Barely.
So that's one of the things that you want to be able to do when you're playing. Is one of the things that makes a song sound like the song is if you can get the melody to sing it in your head and play along with that melody. And I know that's just like grasping for something that's probably not even there. So when I think of down the road about a mile or two, lives a little girl named Pearly Blue. And so I start hunting that. And then with rolls, down the road about a mile or two, lives a little girl named Pearly Blue. About so high, her hair is brown. Prettiest thing, boys, in this town. And so I would suggest to find it, sing it. Just play rolls without even trying to pick it and sing it as you're doing. Down the road about a mile or two, lives a little girl named Pearly Blue. About so high, her hair's brown. Prettiest thing, boys, in this town. It'll help you start building it. Knowing the melody well will help you when you start putting these syncopated banjo breaks together, because a lot of times a banjo roll, the way it lays out, we're having to put the melody note either before where it needs to be if you were singing it, or after where it needs to be if you were singing it. So like in Down the Road. So you're coming in early for that note. About a mile or two. Mile or two is there, but I'm going. I'm coming early on my 2 if I'm singing it. So the rolls jerk the melody in weird places, and that was one of the things. Like if you read any like old news articles or stuff about Earl Scruggs, they talk about, his syncopated banjo style, and it's not rhythmically syncopated so much. Earl plays fairly straight. I mean, he swings some stuff, but it's pretty straight. The syncopation is where Earl is having to force these melody notes to happen. Right. And so being distinctly familiar with how the melody goes is hugely important when, especially approaching tunes like that, vocal tunes for sure, because a lot of times what we play for a break on a vocal tune is often nothing like what the way the words would go. Like a good example of that, you can go back and listen to Earl play "Rolling My Sweet Baby's Arms," So that doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah.
And so how does that sound like "Rolling My Sweet Baby's Arms," especially if you've got that going in your head? Baby's arms. I mean, it's weird where it all falls. So definitely being familiar with the way that the words, being able to sing it is going to help you probably immensely. And that's another thing, stylistically for me. I was a kid sitting in my bedroom. I'm playing, I don't know what I was playing, probably Dear Old Dixie or something. And at that point, man, I was trying to put every lick that I knew in it. I was just if it was a hot lick and I had learned it, I'm putting them all in there, and I'm just killing it. And I was just so proud of myself. And Dad walks down the hall and pokes his head in my door and said, "What are you playing?" I said, "Dear Old Dixie." He said, "Sure doesn't sound like it." And he walks off. Like, what do you know about it? You don't even play banjo. What do you know? He says, "I know what Dear Old Dixie sounds like." And
oof.
Yeah, right. And so it's like, well, yeah, once again, Dad's right.
Yeah.
And so trying to, so melodies are important, but figuring out tunes and making them sound like what you want them to sound like, it's not always the speed. It's being able to emphasize the melody note, but you got to know what the melody note is to be able to emphasize it. And so it's symbiotic. You got to be able to sing it to be able to play it. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that's the whole trick with banjos is most of the notes you play are not melody notes. So
yeah,
it's like needle in a haystack type of stuff. Anyone else with a question? All right. If you think of one, maybe, I don't know, stand over there and we'll get the point probably. Are we good to keep going for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm good.
Everyone good? Okay, cool. Let's talk about your gear. You already told us about that cool Stelling that you own, but now you're associated as a Recording King artist. So
Correct.
Tell us about your preferred Recording King banjo and what drew you to those.
So, living online as I did, even before my lessons, there was the Banjo Hangout, and there was all the Recording King hype. You heard it all, you saw it all, and you had, Gritch was out there posting stuff that was just absolutely insane. And it's like, well, what the heck is all of this? And it's like, but it didn't. It's like it didn't drive me to go out and buy a Recording King banjo. It's like, if anything,
you're stubborn.
I am. I'm stubborn.
Yeah.
It's like, no, all the cool kids have one. I'm not having one of those.
Exactly.
Well, a buddy of mine had a music store, and you can poke around the internet and find out more of the story. But there were banjos that disappeared out of the possession of Recording King that got rebranded as Flint Hill and were sold through another distributor. They were rejects. They were not, there was issues. So I wound up with essentially one of the Recording King Deco Kings. It's the RK60, but it was rebranded and renumbered. And the reject on it was, it's the one with the mother toilet seat back and the headstock. Yeah. And it's got the flower on the back and a ring that goes around the flower. It looks like, on mine, it looked like the ring was put on with a Sharpie. It looked like they just, it was just awful.
Yeah.
But I set it up and, dressed the frets and, I've got it apart. There's a Recording King label in it. It said Recording King right there on the...
They didn't do a very good job of this counterfeiting stuff.
No, it still said Recording King in there. I'm going, well, I don't know what this is. So I played that banjo for about a year and went to Spigma and ran into Greg Rich. And just basically, in that year's time, I knew what I had, and I knew it was a Recording King originally, even though it had been rebranded. And I just thanked him. I said, man, I appreciate y'all building instruments in this price range, because there was nothing. I mean, at the time, all the way, really like through the 80s, through the 90s, there was nothing that I could recommend to a beginner to step up to. Right. You had your $200 starter banjo, and then the next banjo you were going to buy was going to have to be a Gibson or a Stelling or something, and a lot more
Pretty
money.
Serious, yeah.
There was nothing in the $500 to $1,000 range. And so now Recording King was making these banjos in that price range, and they had just come out with the RK35 at that time. And I think the street price on them, and that was in 2011, the street price on them back then was like $700. Is that right? Yeah. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. And so I'm talking to Greg, so I'm thanking him for it. And so Greg says, man, we need you playing one of these banjos. Whatever. And pretty soon Ashley Atz contacted me and, said, hey, if you want to do this, this is the banjo we'd like you to play. It was RK35. And I'd looked at, they had the Elite, the 75, but the 35 was cool. I mean, it had the seagull inlays. It looked like an old RB1, but it had a tone ring. I'm thinking, that's cool. I can rock that.
For sure.
And so I got it and set it up, and I was just kind of blown away. It's like, this is like a real banjo, but it's $700 price point. I can get behind this, and I can encourage folks that are looking to step up. You can spend this much, and I think the street price is like $1,000, $1,100 now for one, which is still crazy for what you get.
Yeah.
And at the time, the banjos that I had in my arsenal, I had a Neckful Phantom that I was playing pretty regular. I was gigging with, and I had one of Gary Price's. I had a Gary Price Knight that was from 1983. And then I had my Stelling. And those were the three banjos that I was using. And I got the Recording King, and that's the only one I was playing.
Yeah,
I'd sit at home and I'd pick that up and I'd play it.
Yeah.
It's like I've got these other nice instruments that I can play, but that's the one I keep reaching for. It's like, this must actually be pretty good. And it felt good. It sounded good. It responded well. And it was, and I felt so comfortable. So I could go to a festival and play, and I had it, and then I could show it to people. Hey, y'all can check this out. And so, while it was an artist endorsement, I'd have been doing the same thing if I'd have found it at a music store. It's like $700 for a banjo. Yeah, I'll take it. Especially after I played it. It felt so good and sounded good and looked right and behaved. And so I have played that RK35 a ton. And then a few years later, I got the one I've got today. It's a M5. This was one of the ones they did. 3 models. They did M5, M7, M9. M5, like this, it's maple. The M7 was mahogany, and the M9 was walnut. Okay. They're all made in the U.S. I think Ed Weber was probably the one doing the instrument necks and stuff. Don Hunter did the finishes, but they're truly all made in the U.S.
Yeah.
So it's USA banjo. And absolutely, and like the way I talked about my Stelling, where I feel it when I play it, I definitely do.
It's got that too.
Yeah,
even through the overalls, huh?
Even through the overalls,
that's pretty
yeah,
impressive.
Yeah, it's got to get through the bibs, man. that's the test. I don't test drive a banjo unless I got the overalls on.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it's got what we consider the professional style construction. You got the real rim, the real tone ring, and it's got everything.
It's great, and I recently had it so this is the M5. It's maple. It's got the pretty fan inlays, and it's a bit austere, but I'm okay with that. I don't have to look at them.
Yeah.
But I don't. I'm okay with bling. Obviously, I've got that Stelling, but I just like the looks of this. Only things I've really done to this banjo, like most banjo players, I'm always goofing around with different bridges and trying, what's new? Well, Brian Hooper just started building bridges again, so I've gone to that. I put one of those on here, and he sent me like 5 of them to try. I put one on it, and I haven't even gone to the others yet. That's good enough.
Don't mess with it.
Yeah, it sounds great. And then I bought a set of the Cheetah Keys right after I first got this banjo, and so I'm happy with those. So I added that. And then the most recent thing I've done to this banjo, I had it refretted. I had stainless frets put in.
Oh, that's great.
So, because I'm hard on frets, and so I was just tired of paying for fret jobs. And
it's so nice to not have to deal with it.
I did the stainless, and now I want to put them in my RK35. But do I want to spend, stainless frets on the 35? It's probably going to happen.
Yeah, eventually. Anything else that you're partial to in terms of tailpieces, head, picks?
I'm not super picky on tailpiece. I typically don't change them. If a banjo comes with a Presto, I can rock it with a Presto.
That's what it has.
Yeah, I'm okay. It holds the strings. I've used a variety of different tailpieces. I've used the Kirschners. Like on my Gary Price, it's got his Gary Price tailpiece on it, and Stelling, it's got the Stelling tailpiece, which is basically a Kirschner. So they hold the strings, and banjo's a machine. I can move it around and make it sound like I want. So I'm not super picky about that. Super fan of the Hooper banjo bridges for sure. I've tried everything. I'm just kind of addicted to these things now. Head wise, just a Remo head. It's nothing fancy. I still have a small stash of 5-star Ludwig unmarked heads in case I need to put another one on the Stelling. Because it likes that head. I've used a Remo on it before, but it really responds.
Not the same.
It's not the same. It really responds best. Other gear picks. I use a JD Crow blue chip thumb pick, and I'm one of those awful people that use the Ernie Ball picky picks, and I have for a long time. Yeah. I started out with the Dunlop finger picks, and I had my set of Dunlop finger picks, and we had gone on family vacation, and I was in high school, still with mom and dad, and we'd gone on vacation, and we're up in Virginia, and I'm, playing my banjo, and took my picks off, and I dropped one. And in the process of finding it, I stepped on it.
Of course.
And in the process of trying to straighten it out, it broke. So now I don't have finger picks. I got one. But somebody at a contest had given me a set of these Ernie Ball finger picks, and I had tried them, and I hate those. And I just threw them in my case. And now I'm stuck with them. And that was what was in my case after I broke my pick. And so now so that's what I use. I use Ernie Ball. Why? Because that's pretty much all I can use. And this is definitely a do as I say and not as I do moment. Learn to buy normal picks that you're comfortable with, that you can find readily. And because if you start with Ernie Ball picks, you won't be able to use anything else.
But they were there for you when you needed them.
They were absolutely. Yeah. And now, so that's pretty much all I use. They wear out quick.
Okay.
Whatever the material is fairly soft. And so they wear out pretty quick. And so people ask me all the time, it's like, what do you use? Ernie Ball finger picks. And it's like, where do you get them? I said, well, I usually just store them on Amazon. And they said, okay. And they go look and they said, why do I got to buy 24 of them? They come in a pack of 24. I said, because you're going to wear them out.
You're going to need them.
You're going to need, you'll wear them out. And especially like a few years ago, they quit making them. Ernie Ball said, we're going to discontinue those. So I called Elderly and ordered a bag of them.
Like, give me all you got. Yeah,
yeah, I'll take them all.
Right.
And so just to be sure I've got picks to last me forevermore. But 3 or 4 years later, they started making them again. But it was just like, so yeah, buy something that you can use. Finger picks, I think, they're going to be what you get used to.
Yeah.
I mean, buy a set, get used to them. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
And,
you'll find something that you bond with.
Yeah.
Eventually. Yeah.
As far as anything else, I mean, I'm using right now. I got a cat eyes capo on here that I bought for myself just because. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not super picky on capos either. It holds the strings down.
Right on.
But I also I've got a couple of the G7th Heritage capos. They're fancy ones. And that's what's on a couple of my other banjos, like my RK35. I mean, I'm playing the M5 today. The 35 is my primary gigging banjo. I've got pickup on it. I can plug in and, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Two bands I'm playing with right now, they both all plug in. So
you gotta
plug
keep
in.
up. Yeah.
You gotta plug in.
Exactly.
So,
anyone else come up with any other questions in the meantime? All set? Cool. Well, I could go on and on and on, but I have a feeling we should probably cut it off here at some point. But don't let me end this without you pitching your channel or your website or whatever people would need to know to find you.
If you want to find me, I'm easy to find. If you went to YouTube and typed in banjo lessons, you will find me. I'm that confident.
Yeah.
But if you want to find me, you can just go to jimpanky.com. Has all of my links right there. It's just a little direct me site. It has links to my personal blog, to the gear I use, to my tabs and merchandise that, that sort of thing. It's just all right there at jimpanky.com. But yeah, go you find all my socials there as well. I'm everywhere. Obviously YouTube. You can also find me on TikTok. I do TikTok streams when I do them, which is, when I'm at home. I'll stream just about every night from about 10 p.m. to midnight on,
And is that just you playing whatever you feel like?
Yeah. You go into the stream, it says, I don't usually play requests, but I can be bribed.
Right.
TikTok has a means of people can give gifts. So I started doing that to be accountable to myself for practice. A couple of years ago, I had a couple of big surgeries. I had to lay off banjo for about 3 months. And it's like, at my age, 3 months might have as well been 3 years.
Yeah.
And so how am I going to do this? Well, as introverted as I am, I am somewhat social. And I thought, well, I can, I had enough followers on TikTok, I could do a live stream. I thought, I wonder if I could just live stream my practice sessions. And so I just started streaming that. And that's kind of what TikTok is for me now. Still, it's not so much a practice session, but I get to hang out, get to talk to people, and I play tunes. And in the process of playing tunes, I discover stuff I need to work on. And then that goes.
Wow.
So
interesting.
It's just me. And it's a different flavor of me. If you're used to my YouTube flavor and you come to my TikTok, it's a little more unhinged. It's not the nice, friendly Bob Ross of the banjo anymore. It's more.
Well, now you got my curiosity.
It's definitely a little more unhinged. I mean, because you're actually interacting with people. A lot of people are there, and some of the folks are here that play, and they like to hang out, and they're regulars, and we just talk banjo and we have a good time. But you get people in a live stream like that whose joy in life is to spoil things. And they'll come in and ask rude questions or just be genuinely awful.
Wow.
And it's like, hey, And I try to say things like, hey, you're absolutely welcome here. I'm just going to sit here and pick some tunes, hang out with my friends, talk. All these folks are my friends, and I'd love for you to be one too. And but don't come at me. I will match your energy. And
The banjo trolls.
yeah, they're out there, man. And obviously you're going to get the folks that come in and say, "Can you play Slayer on that? Play some Led Zeppelin?" And it's like, and occasionally they'll.
And
hit
then you
me,
do.
And then occasionally they hit me. They hit me with some Creed song. I'd never even heard the band before, and so I pulled it up on YouTube. I said, "Yeah, I think I can play that." And so I sit and sort it out while we're doing it. So occasionally things like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I'll have to sign up for TikTok.
Yeah, right. And this is one more thing. Yeah, I looked for you. It's I posted this out there as well. I looked for you. I was going to tag you, but you're not there. So,
no. My social media manager needs to get on top of that, AKA me.
Yeah, no, I get it. But you really should. You might be surprised. It's an amusing place, and it would be. I do it while you can before it gets banned.
Oh yeah, also that. Well, all right. Well, hey, I really appreciate you extending your stay here to talk even more banjo than you were already prepared
I love
to do.
it. I'm always ready to talk about the banjo.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear. A man after my own heart. All right. Thanks all of you for showing up. It's been a hoot. I have some free stickers. Anyone who wants to come up and say hey or whatever, I got at least a little bit of a souvenir for you. So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Elderly. Thanks Recording King. Ashley. Cool. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.